denied a well permit since I've been there 19 years.
I have a question. I'm a water law attorney in the state, and there is a civil law they're called the law of reasonable use. Does that come into play at all as a part of your application and permitting process as to whether quantities of water that's being drawn by these wells that are being approved do you have any jurisdiction over that aspect of it?
That's a good question.
Good, I'm glad I asked it.
The law of reasonable use comes down to basically what was brought up in the last meeting.
It's a reactive law.
It's reactive.
It's a reactive law. You can't determine that in advance, and without the burden of proof is pretty big for that. You know, you have to have a scientific study to show that indeed the aquifer has this much water and that this percentage. How do you define reasonable, basically? And that's for the court to decide.
Well, the only reason why I ask is the courts have the authority to set that. And has to your knowledge, has Tuscola County Circuit Court by any case set any sort of reasonable use standards in the county that you're aware of?
There's no precedent in this county that I know of.
So what about the groundwater rights?
It's under the same doctrine, basically.
So basically then, when you buy a house, you technically own what is underneath you, and then when somebody's irrigating, they're taking your water, so they're taking away your water rights.
The water in Michigan is considered a common resource. It's a common law doctrine, basically. I don't know what you're looking at.
This is a paper that I was given to her last week. And it's basically
Is that Dr. Lush's paper?
Yes, it is.
Yeah, it's based on riparian law.
Any other questions for me?
It's okay for somebody to
It's
take
still the burden
everybody
of
else's
proof.
water?
What's
Is that
that?
what you're saying? It's okay, everybody can take as much water as they want, it doesn't matter if it affects everybody else around you? Is that what you're saying, is a common law, common rights to that water?
No, I'm not saying that. I'm saying that there's a burden of reasonable use, and that's the avenue that you have to go through now is the civil court. I'm not saying that that's good or bad, but that's the avenue that we have to work with right now. Under the Aquifer Conflict Resolution Program that used to be in place, there was a method for mediating these issues that was rescinded 4 years ago. Senator Jim McCloskey will talk about the Senate bill that's going to be reintroduced this month, which is to reintroduce the Aquifer Conflict Resolution Law. But right now, it's frustrating. It's frustrating for everybody. There's no satisfactory answer. Civil courts are the avenue that we have to work with. What we're hoping to look at in Tuscola is a more proactive approach to trying to deal with this and to move into the future. Because as our next speaker will address, irrigation's here to stay, unfortunately. And while irrigation has mostly been the foray of the sandier parts of the state, it's extending out now. Its fingers are going all over the states, and we'll be seeing more irrigation going in. And how are we going to deal with that so that everybody can use this common resource without being affected? And that's what the discussion is today for.
Is there any restriction on how far apart the irrigation wells can be placed?
Not at the present time.
No, not at the present time.
I think a quarter
Except generally they're not going to want to have influences
quarter mile
across.
apart is too close. A quarter mile apart is not good. You start placing irrigation wells a quarter of a mile apart. No.
Well, part of it also depends on pumping capacity, how long they're running their systems, whether they're center pivots or different types of systems. There's a lot of things that go into determining that. I mean, there's variations from 70 gallon per minute wells to 3,000 gallon per minute systems. So you have to look at all of those influences. Okay, so we'll continue on. Right now our speaker is going to be Jim Byram. He is the president of the Michigan Agribusiness Association, and he has great knowledge of the trends in the state and will kind of give you an idea of what's happening here and around the area, good and bad. So.
Evening. Pleasure to be here. I guess I'm compelled to say at the outset that everybody that's here tonight that's speaking with you is interested in a solution. Nobody wants to debate whether there's a problem. We wouldn't have this many people sitting here if there wasn't a problem. And B, I think there's been a history of trying to resolve these situations proactively over the years. I think Saginaw County, if you Google back in the Saginaw News, you'll see a situation that was resolved very favorably. You'll hear about that in a little bit. But irrigation isn't new in Michigan. It's not new at all. In fact, in southwest Michigan, they've been pumping water down there for 50, 60 years out of the same aquifer with absolutely no problem. That's not to say it's the same aquifer. They've been pumping water in Montcalm and Mecosta counties for years again, 40 years, 40, 50 years without problems. Many of you watched along Quanticosi, along M25, those situations where they've been pumping water and irrigating for a long, long time. I actually lived in Reese a lot of years ago. Not kind of to remember how long ago that was, but lived in Reese when Holzai, some of you might remember when Holzai put in those first 2 pivots on M81. And they were a bit of a fascination. I mean, people used to stop and watch them because they were a pretty fascinating thing to watch, especially when one of them, as I recall, walked across M81. It didn't stop. But the situation is in agriculture in Michigan is it's not your mom and pa's agriculture anymore. In 1970, we averaged 81 bushels of corn per acre. Last year, we averaged 153 bushels of corn per acre, and in this particular part of the geography, it was closer to 170 to 200, depending where you were. Growing that crop takes more water. There's absolutely no question about it. And the intensity of agriculture is increasing as well. But I need to make 2 very clear points. One is, for those of you that are not involved in agriculture, 98% of all the farmland is farmed by family farmers. These aren't folks, they're corporations that sit off in St. Louis or Minneapolis or wherever. They live in the state, they work in the state, and they want to keep doing things here. They don't want to have problems. Nobody intentionally creates a situation that's going to be a negative. And in fact, the whole dispute resolution program that was in place was aggressively supported by everybody that's in the situation or that's in the industry. The potato growers, the seed corn growers, our organization, everybody supports it. We want to be proactive and solve the problem. We didn't propose eliminating it. In fact, it was the governor, but we ain't going to go there. So it was eliminated for a couple particular reasons. We want it back. We fully support having it back. Let me give you a couple other things that are going to be happening in agriculture. Let me talk a little about site-specific ag. Site-specific agriculture is where you'll see folks go across the field and sample little grids in the field, little particular plots in a given field, so they only apply enough fertilizer for that particular grid. That's to reduce cost. Variable seeding applications, they only put enough seed down, depending on soil type, so that they can maximize yield but minimize cost. Same thing is true with water use. Folks don't irrigate just for the sake of irrigating. The cost of irrigation is extraordinary. So when you're going through a 60-year drought, as we were going through until what, Thursday or Friday. So let's say we had frost, then we had drought, now we have flood, if you've driven through Quanticosi or through Munger. So it's been a fascinating year, but folks have to produce a crop. We're going to see more irrigation. There's no question about it. You drive around the countryside, as I did this afternoon, there's fence rows being taken out, there's more drain tile being put in, and there's going to be more irrigation. Water is a resource, there's no question about it, and there is going to be more water used for irrigation because yields are going to continue to increase, and it's going to take more water to produce that crop. The next piece is, from a competitive standpoint, we have to compete. Farmers in this area, whether it's a 40-acre farmer or a 4,000-acre farmer, has to compete and be able to be profitable. Irrigation is one of those tools. Let me state equivocally and very clearly, nobody wants to irrigate at the expense of you losing your water. That's not why they do it. And that's why we want the dispute resolution program back. That's why agriculture wants it back. Ben Cook was here with the Potato Growers Association. We all support it. We want to be proactive. We don't want to create a problem. How many times have I said that? It's important to solve those problems that exist. Finally, as we look going forward, the kinds of things we're going to see in the state, we're going to see more irrigation in different areas. We're seeing more of it in Huron County. We're seeing more of it in Sanilac County. We're seeing it happen everywhere. And it's going to continue to happen. Our objective is to do it right. And understand that the folks that put down those irrigation wells went to the DEQ and went to MDA on the site plan to figure out where those wells could go. They did the analysis. They put them where everything said was a reasonable place to put the wells. The problem is there's been some difficulties in some shallower wells in particular. Those have to be solved, and that's everybody's objective. But agriculture, A, isn't going to go away. B, isn't going to go back in time to doing what happened in the past. And C, is going to use more water. So the objective is to get it right and figure out how to use that water most efficiently, how to put those wells down most effectively, and how to minimize or eliminate any impact on the local community. And nobody here has the silver bullet answer, because under that surface, nobody knows for sure what's going on. Nobody does. I don't care how many monitoring wells are down. I don't care how much USGS does. In any given situation, there can be any number of problems or any number of effects on what's causing particular actions in particular wells. So the objective is to be proactive. When a problem occurs, solve it. But agriculture is going to continue to grow. And in Tuscola County, it's a pretty important part of the economy. I think the objective is, as I say, just figure out how to do it right. And that's what we're about. So, Abby?
So I think that's kind of a hard message to hear for a lot of people, and I know that. And so that's why I wanted to have our next speaker, Jason Walters, come up and talk about his experience in Saginaw County. And Dave Young also has some background in that. I think is going to backstop him to a certain extent. But
I'm in front of the firing squad.
Yeah. But just to give you an update, you know, I mean, we had similar issues in Saginaw County and, well, 10 years ago, I guess, and it was the impetus for the original Aquifer Conflict Resolution program, and they've done a lot of things proactively there. There was a drought in Saginaw County this year, and there have been no issues, so we're looking at trying to emulate something similar here in Tuscola. So I'll let you.
Thanks, Abby. Abby and Dave, they've done a terrific job so far, at least from the grower perspective, of getting involved and showing leadership to, I think, represent both the community and the grower, and to try to be a mediator in the circumstance. So thank you, both of you guys. Abby asked if I could come tonight to talk a little bit about the circumstance that we had in Saginaw County about 10 years ago. And to give a little bit of background, our farm, we're a potato farm here locally. We do use both surface and well water here in Tuscola County and the surrounding area. We also have a farm in Saginaw County in Hemlock, Michigan. And I'll take 10 or 15 minutes to give you a little bit of the history that we had with an example that's very similar to what we're dealing with today. Actually about 12 years ago, I'm third generation in the business, but our second generation picked up some land in Hemlock, and it was dry land. It was sand that wouldn't make a potato crop unless it was water. And so we went through a process of drilling production irrigation wells and putting irrigation systems in like you see around Tuscola County here. And we started pumping. We grew potatoes, and we were proud to grow potatoes. We had people working for us in the area to do that. And all of a sudden, about 10 years ago, it was in 2002 I think, we started getting phone calls about local community homeowner wells that were going dry. And you know, it was a dry summer. We had it was actually not quite as dry as what we've had this season, but it was a dry year. And the calls started to come in, and they kept coming, and they kept coming, and the community felt like we were the issue. And quite honestly, we didn't know if we were the issue. And so we worked with DEQ, with USGS, with local hydrology experts to help understand the aquifer that we had in Saginaw County, and this was more in the short term, and came to a conclusion that we probably did indeed have some impact with some of the wells. Maybe not all, but some of them. And we started working within a certain radius of our production wells to help local residents if they had a circumstance. I hope everyone understands that we're farmers, we live in the communities that we farm, we're neighbors with you guys. We have kids that go to school and, you know, play on the same playground as all of you guys here in the meeting tonight. And we have absolutely no reason to want to make, as I think Jim pointed out very well, to have any kind of adversarial relationship in the community. We want to do what's right. We wanted to do what was right in Saginaw County, and we want to do what's right here in Tuscola County, in the circumstance that we have today. The question is what's right, and the key is to be able to get information so that we understand exactly the influence of our production wells on the aquifer in the surrounding residential wells that you all, I assume, represent. So a little bit about the specifics of the example that we had in Saginaw County. We ended up supporting over 30 local homeowner wells to get replaced or to get lowered. Most circumstances, in fact all, were situations where folks were pumping from 30 or 40 or 50 feet, and they were generally within a half a mile to a mile and a half of our production wells. And I think Dave did a good job of showing the cone of depression that can be formed. And when we irrigate, we do create a short-term impact, and if you're within that cone of depression, you may not be able to reach the water. The water's there. In Saginaw County it was there. And I'll go into a little bit further why I can say that, but it was there. It was in their circumstance, they just couldn't reach it. Their straws weren't deep enough, is what we would say. So we worked with residents on a one-on-one basis to help them reach the water, and and we found resolution. And every example was a little bit unique, and I think that probably the circumstance that we have here tonight is similar. We all have a unique circumstance and situation. So it was in that period of time that the Bill 1008 or dispute resolution got passed, and in fact we worked. When I saw Dave at the meeting a week and a half ago, I thought, wow, I recognize that face, and it didn't take us very long to realize that we had the history of Saginaw County that he was involved with, and worked in that circumstance to get the community and Walter Farms through it. A few things that I want to make sure that we talk about, or that I point out, is that so far this year, it's been as dry in Saginaw County as it's been here in Tuscola County, and we've been pumping that aquifer as hard as we ever have. For sure, Kevin Storm here, our farm manager, was responsible for that area. And Kevin, we pump more water out in Hemlock than we ever have, right? And we haven't had one single phone call this season in regards to a conflict with a local homeowner well. And what does that tell us? It tells me, at least, and I think Dave will agree with this, that there was no long-term impacts on the aquifer that we, or the community, we're all sharing a resource that we had. It's a renewable resource, and we showed through monitoring wells. We had, I think, 7 or 8 monitoring wells that we put in to really study the aquifer in Saginaw County. And we showed every year that after we got done pumping, that the static water level rebounded back to exactly where it was when we started monitoring. And we have over 10 years now of information to show that the water level comes back every year to where it was within 1 or 2 feet. Of course, the state's waters go up and down a little bit, and it follows that, but it's great to know that it's a sustainable resource that comes back every year. Do you have any comments in that regard? There's a couple of interesting things that I wanted to point out in terms of that example. We conducted a study, Walter Farms was involved with a study that ended up revealing that our impact, and Dave, I know that there's probably some frustration that Dave couldn't say exactly that our irrigation wells have influence at a mile or a mile and a half.